Hey everyone, it's that guy over there bringing you the probably the final installment of the review part of this Tyranid series. After this, I'm kind of excited to be done with this because now I can start talking about specific list builds and tactics for specific missions, and we can kind of explore Tyranids that way. I just felt like I needed to get this as a groundwork, um, something to build off of. So this is the Leviathan supplement review. Now, when you buy the Leviathan book, it comes with like 12 missions, some City of Death objectives. It comes with some fighter ace rules. There's a lot of stuff in here um, that honestly I've just never bothered with because it's just so different from the main. They're Echo of War missions, which are available for a lot of the factions. I just haven't ever played them because I think at least people in my group are mostly gearing them towards like competitive tournament type lists or builds, so that they can do they always want to play Maelstrom missions or just straight up book missions, and it's just kind of a layer of complexity that I haven't gotten into. But they'd be great for if you were trying to build like a narrative campaign. It would give you some ideas. There's some cool ones in here, but again, they're kind of weird too. Like there's one where there's a tidal wave going around the planet like forever, and so you have to outrun the tidal wave, and you're fighting a battle. Like there's just kind of some kind of bizarre stuff in these missions, but and then some people will actually let you play some tournaments will actually let you play the uh, Death from the Skies, all these fighter ace rules, and I know the kind of cool one for us is that if we get shot at, we can just like fly off the table edge, basically voiding their shots. So there's some good stuff in here. It's not just a rule book. But that being said, you will probably mostly just use the rules. So the big addition here are these data sheets and the forces of the Leviathan Hive Fleet detachment. So it's a unique detachment. This is kind of like our version of the like Company of the Great Wolf or whatever detachments, or the Decurion detachment. But this is our version. So what is it? You have the option, or your compulsory is 1 headquarters and 3 troops, but your optional is 2 headquarters, so that gives you 3 headquarters in total, 6 troops, so you could have 9 troops in total, 3 elites, 3 fast attack, 3 heavy support, 1 lords of war. No fortifications though, so that means you can't take a comm relay, which is key in a lot of builds. But I guess I'll get into it. But you don't have a objective secured, which really hampers you. And generally, because you don't have that, people will just take the Mucilid spores because they're 15 points. We'll talk about them here in a second, but you can take 3 of those, and then you get 3 Flying Hive Tyrants, and then that's probably why most people will take this. All right, so restrictions. They all have to be Tyranids. If your warlord is from this detachment, then you must roll on the Hive Fleet Leviathan warlord traits table to see which trait he has. We'll just go over those real quick. 1 is he gets infiltrate. 2, the warlord in any unit it joins has the preferred enemy special rule. 3, you add 1 to reserve rolls. 4 is Mind Eater, which you had in the main rule book. 5 is Digestive Denial. So I'll say 4 is 2 victory points if you kill enemy independent characters in the challenge. Digestive Denial, you get to downgrade the cover save by 1 of somebody's a piece of terrain in your opponent's deployment zone. And 6, Adaptive Biology. That's where if you gain a wound, you get Feel No Pain at the beginning of the next movement phase. So they're not really great, and you have to pick them, which is a huge deal. So I almost always try to take a CAD in addition to this one, just so that I don't have to take these. Command benefits, adaptive instincts. You can reroll the instinctive behavior roll for any unit in this detachment, which is okay. I need to check. Instinctive behavior is the D6 when you consult the table. That's okay, but if you're rolling for that, that means something bad's happened already. And then the ideal mission commander, you can choose to reroll your warlord trait, but again, you have to pick from that table, which is not good. And then warlord traits, when generating its warlord traits, a Tyranid warlord may choose to roll on the table right instead of those found in the... So basically, any Tyranid warlord can choose from these warlord traits. But again, they're not very good, so you would probably just choose strategic. That's what I would do. So we'll get into the unit review proper. The first one, and it's the biggest edition of them all, is the Mucilid Spore Cluster. It's a 15-point, basically bigger version of a Spore Mine. He's Weapon Skill, Dash, Bliss Skill, Dash, Strength 1, Toughness 3, Wounds 3. Keep that in mind, Toughness 3, and he has 3 wounds. Initiative 3, Attacks Dash, Leadership 3, Save Dash. It has Deep Strike, Fearless, and Shrouded. Does not have Instinctive Behavior, so that means you don't have to roll for it. And it may include up to 2 additional Mucilid Spores, so you can, for 45 points, get 3 of them, or you can just take 1 for 15 points, and this kind of revolutionizes Tyranids now, because in a CAD, for 30 points, you're done. You don't have to take any more troops if you didn't want to, and then you could save all your points for Flying Hive Tyrants, or Carnifexes, or Trigons, or Raveners, or whatever you were trying to take. So keep that in mind. If you're trying to get around the troop choices, this is how you do it. Massive Floating Bomb. Each Mucilid Spore uses the Floating Death and Living Bomb rules that applies to Spore Mines. So basically they're the same as Spore Mines. And it's like all references to Spore Mines, and these special rules apply to the Mucilid Spores, except that the hits inflicted when the Mucilid Spore explodes are Strength 8 and AP 3. Increase the strength of the attack for additional Mucilid Spores as for Spore Mines. So if you have 3 of them and they explode in combat, it's a Strength 10 AP 3, which that's pretty powerful. Obviously, you're instant deathing Toughness 5 things now, like Space Marines bikes, and they don't feel no pain anymore, and they don't get cover anymore. So if Mucilid, because the issue is with Mucilid Spores, you have to buy a Tyrannocyte kit, use the Tyrannocyte to make a Spore Assist, and then the little legs that are hanging off the Tyrannocyte, that's the Spore Mine. So basically you get 1 Mucilid Spore Cluster or Spore Mine per box. So that's like a $56 box. So a unit of 3 is it's more than $150. And it's 45 points on the table. So it's probably the worst point to dollar ratio in the game. Granted, you could buy the Maiatic Spores from Forge World, and they are great stand-ins, or convert your own, but just keep that in mind. They're hard to purchase. The other special rule, which is huge, they're the only unit I think in the game that has this. Mucilid Spore is called Sky Blast. Mucilid Spore clusters are allowed to assault zooming flyers or swooping monstrous creatures. Swooping flying monstrous creatures. When they do so successfully, then they will explode as described in the Floating Death special rule, hitting the target automatically with strength and AP as described above. Hits on zooming flyers are always resolved against the target's model's side armor. So in general, there are some 12 things, but in general, everything's like an 11 or a 10. So you're going to do a damage result against it. It ignores cover, so you can't jink it, and you hit side armor. But flyers usually they're usually the same all the way around. So yeah, that's pretty good. So the cool thing is if you have 3 of them and they assault the Demon Prince, you can instant death Demon Princes that are flying by. So yeah, for 15 points you get a lot of stuff. So it's a great unit. It's just really slow and just kind of floats around, but your opponent probably doesn't see that coming when all of a sudden a Spore Mine assaults their flyer and blows it up. That's flying by. So really great way to get around your troop requirement if you're trying to do that. And overall, a great addition to the Tyranids. Zoanthropes. This is the next entry. They're 50 points each still. They basically replaced the main profile in the book with this. Everything's the same, except you can now add up to 5 additional Zoanthropes, so you can have a unit of 6. And if you have 3 or more, you can add the Neurothrope, which is exactly the same as a Zoanthrope. However, it gives the unit the Spirit Leech power. It's a Warp Charge 1, which is good. Is a Witchfire power that targets a non-vehicle enemy unit within 18 inches. That unit must take a leadership test on 3d6. If the test has failed, enemy unit suffers 1 wound for each point the test is failed by, with no armor saves or cover saves allowed. Add 1 dice to your Warp Charge pool for each wound inflicted by Spirit Leech. These additional dice can only be used by the unit that manifested Spirit Leech and only to manifest the Warp Blast. So it's basically trying to replace the Doom of Malantai, but it's not nearly as good. If you take 3, it's only a 25-point upgrade to give him a Neurothrope, so you might as well. And it's a Warp Charge 1 attack. Surprisingly, this is like one of the best ways for us to actually wound a Wraith Knight, because it's based on their leadership, and you get 3 dice. So if it's a gargantuan creature, you can just do wounds to it. And if you have like the Lictor Assassination Brood, it reduces the leadership by 1. It kind of evens the odds there. I think one of the new Tau things has leadership 9. They're gargantuan creature. So on average, you're rolling like in a 10 or 11. So that's just a couple of free wounds. Of course, it would get invulnerable and feel no pain saves, but it's probably one of the best ways to do it. So that's good. It didn't make him any worse. It just added some options, which is good. Maliceptor. He is a Web Skill 3, Bliss Skill 3, Strength 6, Toughness 6, Wounds 5, Initiative 3, Attacks 3, Leadership 10, Save 4+, for 205 points. He's a monstrous creature. He's got Scything Talons, Mastery Level 2, Shadow on the Warp, Synapse creature. He's got Psychic Barrier for a 5+ invulnerable save. It always knows Psychic Overload. Maliceptor generates its remaining powers from powers of the Hive Mind. Psychic Overload is a Warp Charge 2 power. It's a focused Witchfire with a range of 24 inches. The target must take a leadership test on 3d6. Vehicles are treated as having leadership of 10. If the test has failed, non-vehicle models suffer D3 wounds with no armor or cover saves allowed. The vehicle models suffer a single glancing hit with no cover saves allowed, it should have been D3 also. Not sure why they did that. Yeah, but at least you don't get cover saves. The Psyker can attempt to manifest this psychic power up to 3 times in each of its psychic phases. Each attempt is resolved separately, however the enemy unit cannot be selected as the target of psychic overload manifested by the same Psyker more than once each psychic phase. So you can't even choose the same one multiple times. So it could have been really good if it was like Warp Charge 1, but being Warp Charge 2, you need to use like at least 4 dice. And then if you have 4 dice 3 times, that's 12 dice. And it's just not, it doesn't have enough punch. If it was a Warp Charge 1 and you could target the same thing multiple times and it was D3 glancing hits or even a single penetrating hit, at least you'd get like a damage result, in addition to the whole point. Or maybe if you got a leadership test on 46, it's just not enough bang for your buck. And with only a 5+ invulnerable save, it's not much harder than really anything else, because honestly, you'll get a 5+ cover save most of the time. So Maliceptor's kind of disappointing. Toxicrene, he's 160 points. He's got Acid Blood, Choking Cloud, which is the... that's his gun. Okay, Lash Whip and Toxic Miasma. He's Fearless, Instinctive Behavior, Feed, Poison 2+, Shrouded, and it's got a Hypertoxic rule. Any hit inflicted by this model that has the Poison special rule, including any hits caused by its Choking Cloud, which is its gun, gains the Instant Death special rule on a 2 wound roll of a 6, which is kind of nice. Choking Cloud is 12-inch range, Strength 3 AP dash, Assault 1, ignores cover, Large Blast, Poison 2+, Predatory Sentience. Predatory Sentience, when making armor penetration rolls against vehicles that are open-topped or have lost 1 or more of their hull points, this weapon has the Armor Bane special rule. But again, it's only Strength 3, so on average you're rolling a 10. But, at least you can do something to vehicles. His stats, again, are Weapon Skill 3, Bliss Skill 3, Strength 5, Toughness 6, Wounds 5, Initiative 3, Attack 6. 6 attacks, that's a lot. Leadership 8, and a 4+ save. So just so you're tracking, this is more attacks than I think anything else in the book. Granted, it's the same as Trigons, but they have 2 sets. They have 5 attacks, and they get 2 sets of Scything Talons to bring them up to 6. He doesn't have any close combat weapons other than his Lash Whips. But it's the highest just standard number of attacks, which is kind of crazy because I don't know if he's really supposed to do that. The idea with him is that he's kind of like a bigger version of Venomthrope. I wish he could do the cloud, the spore cloud that gave cover saves or shrouded to units around him, like a Venomthrope does. But sadly, he does not. And there's a pretty good chance that you throw out this blast template and it scatters back onto you, and if you roll a 6, it just would kill you. You'd get an armor save, but that choking cloud, I kind of wish it was just a flamer template with maybe torrent or something. But it's 2+. It just doesn't ignore armor saves or anything, or else it'd be really great. He's only 160 points though, so I don't know. It might be worth taking, but I think he does best in a Tyranids site. But just real close to being incredibly useful, but just not there. Okay, we're going to talk about the 2 units, and then I'll have to do a second one on the formations because this is getting kind of long. But anyway, you got the Tyranids site. This is our Spore Pod back. However, our old drop pods used to be toughness 4, which was really stupid. Now he's toughness 6. So I'll go over the stats real quick. He's 75 points, Weapon Skill 2, Ballistic 2, Strength 5, Toughness Size 5, Wound 6, Initiative 3, Attacks 3, Leadership 8, and a 4+ save. He's a monstrous creature. He's got 5 Death Spitters. He's got Deep Strike, Fearless, Instinctive Fire, which is a rule that I'll get to in a minute. Drifting Death. Tyranids cannot run or charge, but they can consolidate but not make sweeping advances. Transport Spore. A Tyranids does not use a slot on the Force Organization chart. It can carry a single unit with Tyranid faction and has a transport capacity of 20. Monstrous creatures count as 20 for purposes of transport capacity. Declare which unit is being carried during deployment. A Tyranids always enters play using the Deep Strikes rule. And then it has the drop pod rules, where if it drops in, it minimizes the scatter so that it lands safely. When it lands, then you can put the unit within 6 inches of it, as long as they're not within 1 inch of the enemy or impassable terrain, or within impassable terrain. Basically a drop pod. And then you can't get back inside of it for the rest of the game. And then he's got options for 5 Barb Stranglers or 5 Venom Cannons to replace its Death Spitters. And that's 25 points. So for 100 points, you can give it a blast template weapon. Instinctive Fire is under the Spore Assist rule, but basically you automatically fire at the nearest unit within range and line of sight, and then you shoot at the end of the shooting phase before morale checks are taken. So you shoot all your other guns, then you come back and do these guys, and then you're done. It's kind of neat. It gives us a new way to play. If I think you would see a lot of these, and I've seen a lot of lists where they call it pod shame, where they just have a ton of these, and pretty effective. Especially because they don't use a slot on the Force Org chart, and they're not dedicated transports. So technically, you could take your headquarters and minimum troops, and then just take as many of these as you could fit in the points, and then just float around and shoot stuff with Strength 5 guns, or if you paid for the upgrades. Because he can move around now, which he didn't used to do before. Very similar, but different, is the Spore Assist. Same points, 75. It has the same guns, the 5 Death Spitters, but you can replace them with Barb Stranglers or Venom Cannons for 25 points. This one has Fearless and Infiltrate, so it does not Deep Strike, it infiltrates, which is kind of weird because it's it falls from the sky and then lands somewhere, and then it digs in like a tick and then sits there. And so it should probably be able to Deep Strike, especially because it can't move. That's the big difference, is it can't move. It's got Psychic Resonator. Any friendly Synapse creatures within 6 inches of the model adds 6 inches to its Synapse range, which is really cool for hiding in the backfield and giving yourself more, like a Zone Throat behind it, would have a 18-inch synapse range, which is cool. And it's got spore node. So I'm going to do a whole video on the sporocyst, but it's got the spore node rule where a model with this special rule can produce a spore mine cluster with 3 spore mines in the shooting phase in addition to any attacks it makes. Place the spore mines wholly within 6 inches of the model in unit coherency and not in impassable terrain, or within 1 inch of an enemy model. After they are placed, the spore mines are treated as a separate unit for the rest of the battle. Once per battle, a sporocyst can produce a single mucilid spore instead of the spore mine cluster. This is placed the same way as the spore mine. So this gives us a way to generate free models, and I have a lot of ideas for how to use this. I have something like 11. They were my mycetic or meiotic. Yeah, they were mycetic spores before that I'm just going to use as these, and I have a lot of ideas on how to really spam that out and abuse that. So they're really cool. I think they are better at sitting in the backfield and holding an objective than like Ripper Swarms, because they are toughness 6 and you can place them afterwards, or if there's objectives kind of like off to the side out of your deployment zone, they can infiltrate on them, and really cool. And I'm going to do a video just for these guys and talk about my Galaga lists. If you guys are familiar with the 80s video game Galaga, you might see where I'm going. So anyway, that's the book. Well worth the buy if you're a Tyranid player. I would say that you should definitely get this. Whereas with the Rising Leviathan supplements, I would say only do maybe the second one. The first one, if you like the fluffy games, I would say this one's key. So anyway, that's all I have for now. We got one more where I'm going to do the formations that came with this, and then we'll be done with Codex review. So anyway, thank you for your time. Please like, comment, subscribe.